diplomatic tune being taken as a result, because there are a lot of negotiations going on now between Egypt and Ethiopia over the GERD, the Great Renaissance Dam. We are seeing them taking negotiation as the first option now, and we are hopeful this works. Although personally I'm skeptical, it may not, or it may not yield result. And I'm also seeing South Sudan currently playing much of a mediating role between the two countries. About me, myself, I see myself focusing my careers into security and the strategic studies. That is what I see. Thank you very much.
Great stuff. Thank you. I see the other two guests have still not joined our Zoom. The other two were meant to be Bisrat Fikadu from Ethiopia, as well as Nassim Omar from Egypt. But it's fine, even if they're not here, we can continue with the conversation, right? So many of us may not know what the Nile River is, where it is situated, which countries have a legitimate claim to it. Please share that with us.
Thank you. The Nile River has its source from Jinja, that is in Uganda, and it has several tributaries from Congo, from South Sudan, from Ethiopia, and from Tanzania, from Kenya, Rwanda. All these countries contribute towards the Nile, because the water bodies in all this country flows into the Nile, and it flows downstream where it gets bigger and bigger and bigger up to Egypt. And I personally, and I want to make a disclaimer notice, whatever observations I make here are my personal observation and do not necessarily represent or depict the official view of the Republic of South Sudan.
Yes.
And whatever I will discuss is for hypothetical use and for academic purposes and for media consumption, and does not represent the official view of South Sudan. So I personally believe all countries that are contributing to the Nile all have the same right to use the Nile sustainably. Thank you.
For many of us who live in Africa, right, South Sudan is possibly, together with Eritrea, the smaller babies of Africa, if I can call them that, right? And we always asking the question, why aren't Africans able to unite? What in your experience do you feel is the reasons why Africans are not able to unite or live cohesively together?
It all comes back to the question of what I can call selfishness in layman's language. And politically, we are living in an anarchical society, in a state of anarchy where everyone works for himself. And of course, I am seeing much of an external influence over this matter, because I believe for thousands of years, every person who is along the Nile Basin from the source down to the downstream have enjoyed the Nile River peacefully without any issue. Not until the British gave it or drafted whatever agreement it is and gave Egypt this monopolized power over the Nile. So we can see where the source of the problem is coming from.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And you know, when you look at the Nile River and what it means for Africa, and obviously the countries that benefit from it, one would be shocked to think even there's a dispute, because this is not a private asset, right? It's a natural resource. Do you feel though that there's a bit of a murkiness in between distinguishing this from a private asset and a human right that everyone is entitled to?
Thank you. Where I live in Uganda, every now and then, the Egyptians measure the level of the Nile to know the level and how it is used. To me, this makes Nile, yes, Nile is a God-given gift to all the countries that share the source, and who all, to me personally, have equal right to enjoy the resource sustainably for the future. Now, I personally find that Egypt has taken a monopolized ownership over the Nile, and which is not in tune with nature and not in tune with the other members of the Nile River.
Mm-mm. And the reason behind Ethiopia's building of the Great Ethiopian Renaissance Dam is quite disputed, right? From what we see in the news, we are told that it's going to generate electricity, it's going to be a hydroelectric power plant, right? And others are disputing that. What, in your estimation, is the reason behind Ethiopia's ambitious undertaking, and what then is the right conclusion we should deduce from the reason why it has taken up so much effort and energy and investment even in making sure that this dam becomes a success?
Ethiopia is a sovereign country, and as a sovereign country, they have a right over the territory within their country legitimately, and they have a right to political development. They have a right to economic development. Just like anybody else, they have a right to sustainable electricity. And there is not much sustainable electricity like the hydroelectric power, which makes it the first choice when thinking of sustainable source of electricity that will drive economic development, that will drive infrastructure development, that will drive industrial capacity of Ethiopia as a country. And South Sudan itself has not yet reached a level whereby we can build our own dam also on the Nile. Of course, we will come to that. We are also looking at the same great Ethiopian Renaissance Dam to be the source to provide South Sudan and Eritrea with the sustainable electricity that will help foster the development in the two countries. Personally, that's what I see, although I don't know if it is the government policy of South Sudan. Now, I mostly see economic force, driving force. I also see the political drive because Ethiopia owns their land and the water bodies within their land. I also see the political drive at play here. So we can say there are collective things that are driving this ambitious project.
Definitely. Also, the question of Egypt and its claim to legitimacy where this river is concerned, right, is much disputed as well. Some do not necessarily see the current Egypt as being a part of Africa. Obviously, they deduce this through its association with the Arab League and perhaps its leaning toward Israel and allowing external parties to enjoy the resources of Egypt. Do you feel, in your personal estimation, that had it not been also for the claimed assassination attempt around 2018 of the then president of Egypt, the dispute between Egypt and Africa would be as grave as it is now?
Well, personally, I will reserve my comments on that. However, I would like to reiterate that Ethiopia is still part and partial and integral part of Africa. As long as it is still on the African continent, we take them as integral part of Africa. And their relationship with Israel, I will call it bilateral. And I personally depict that it has to do with their own bilateral development, cooperation, and all that. But I don't see it is at play over the River Nile. And I don't subscribe to the ideology that Egypt is not part of Africa. Thank you.
No problem. Let's speak a bit about South Sudan, right? We've only and always known Sudan as a country. And then we heard of the splitting between South Sudan now taking its own autonomy, right? Give us a sense of how this came about and how is South Sudan now thriving and surviving?
Self-determination has always been at the heart of the Sudan People Liberation Movement and the South Sudan Sudan People's Liberation Army that actually spearheaded the military, civil war, and struggle for the last 21 years before the independence of South Sudan. And it was a choice of the people. Of course, we had a choice to decide to be together with Sudan as one state, or to split from the Sudan and therefore pave way for the birth of the new Republic of South Sudan. It was a legal process. It was internationally accepted, and the standards of the referendum were beyond doubt. And the voices of the people of South Sudan was clear. We needed an independence. And with this independence, which was stipulated in the CPA document, which was unanimously agreed by 98% of the population of South Sudan, that is how South Sudan came about as a new republic. And in relation to the Nile, South Sudan was never part of the Nile agreement. And like Eritrea, it was never part of the Nile agreement. And I personally think we are not bound by this agreement legally. And by international law standards, I believe there should be a new agreement drafted that will include South Sudan. And I have observed quite a while how Egypt has immersed themselves into earlier signs of negotiation with South Sudan by investing into power. I can see in my own state, that is Western Equatorial State, Egypt donated 2 generators, which was to use diesel to generate power locally. And Egypt has not done that only in my state, across different states in South Sudan, which is not quite a sustainable project. But every year we are seeing that the Nile water is destroying hundreds of properties, is a big threat to lives in South Sudan, especially people who are living along the Nile basins. And the floods has affected, actually the perennial flooding has affected a lot of people who are living in South Sudan. And I personally believe South Sudan has a right to develop our own water system and to build reservoirs, contain the excess water, and also build a dam. We have a site for a dam in Nimule. So I believe South Sudan equally has a right to the share of Nile. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. No problem. Let's just look briefly on the Nile Water Agreement of 1959, right? Where, from what we know now, Egypt enjoys a sizable portion. What do you make of this Nile Water Agreement and the countries that are currently excluded and Egypt's claim of a bigger portion?
Egypt has a right to water and the sustainable water. I agree with that 100%, but I have a feeling that Egypt is addicted to too much water because I don't believe that all the water Egypt claims is useful to Egypt. Actually, the amount of water they use can even be sourced from the Nubian sea water. And sustainably, it can be used for hundreds and thousands of years without any problem. Egypt can still use the Nile, sharing it with the other countries along without any problem. To me, I see Egypt's ownership and a claim to the larger portion of the Nile to be much of a power flex, first of all. And they might be using it as an arena to show their military superiority or their power at play, or for other attractions, let's say tourism attraction and so forth. But for the use, I actually believe this Nile water can be equally used, equally shared among all the tributaries, the countries along the Nile basins without a problem.
I wanna look into the issue also when you speak of Egypt's dominance, right, or rather persistent narrative of it being a majority shareholder of the Nile River. When, for example, from a logistics point of view, you use the Suez Canal, right? Egypt charges you a taxation of sort, right, for using that. Shouldn't the countries also where the Nile River passes through charge those that eventually collect it, because they too have a legitimate claim to it?
That is where the problem comes in. Actually, the agreement was drafted by during the Anglo-Egyptian era, where the British had absolute control over Egypt, and they drafted this agreement to their advantage and not taking into consideration the rights of the rest. And actually, we are living. This will come actually in my conclusive remarks. We are living in a globalized, in an era of globalization, whereby information is highly circulated. People are knowledgeable. People know their rights. People know what they rightfully deserve, which was not the case when the British were drafting this agreement. So I believe this agreement is unfair, and it needs to be renegotiated and rediscussed and redrafted in a manner that will ensure peaceful coexistence and sharing of these natural resources amicably among the countries of the Nile Basin. So that is my personal observation on that.
The current negotiations that are taking place, where they are looking at diplomatic solutions as opposed to a military one, do you feel that it may yield some results in the sense that it will create stronger partnerships for countries that seem to be in agreement over a stance and a power position with regards to owning or managing the Nile River?
That is a choice. Peace is a choice. And whenever negotiations are going on, we can only hope it works out well. We wouldn't wish to be prophets of doom, but the truth is Egypt's persistent tone, aggressive tone of ownership will not really yield too much of a result. On the opposite, it will spark a lot of anger from the other Nile users who also wish to benefit economically from the Nile and to also have equal right over the Nile. I am looking at a scenario where Egypt sits down and rethink this agreement in the interest of the regional peace, in the interest of world peace, in the interest of their own security, because as a state, it is only wrong to create more enemies and more enemies. Instead of doing that, why don't they look at more sustainable technologies of even purifying the seawater? There are technologies available now that can purify the seawater into usable water, fresh water for the country. And at the same time, negotiate a fair deal that will allow equal and sustainable use over the Nile. Because everyone has a right over the Nile. What if all the other countries decide to demand tax over the Nile, especially the contributing countries like Tanzania, Kenya, Uganda, where the source is, and actually the biggest Blue Nile is coming from Ethiopia, and this is one of the largest contributing factors to the Nile. What if they demand taxes? This could be a cause of a possible security instability in the region. So if Egypt, to conclude, if Egypt chooses to respect the negotiations going on and bring in a fair deal, it will be a win-win situation for all. But in an instance where Egypt tries to insist on a more aggressive tone, I don't see it playing well to Egypt, because you cannot play with someone from whom water comes to you. Your security depends on that. Egypt's life support depends on all the countries that are upstream of the Nile. They cannot show more aggressive tone to them, only to negotiate. Thank you.
I see on social media the issue is currently gaining a lot of traction, and almost on a daily basis, youths from either Ethiopia and Egypt are pulling each other's hair, as it were. And the next one is saying, it is my right. And the other is saying, but I own it. I've got this Water Agreements Act that was put in place. Why do you feel that there's so much energy that the youths in both Egypt and Ethiopia are putting into this discussion or this developing story? Whereas Uganda, South Sudan, Tanzania, there seems to be a bit of relaxation on their part.
Media propaganda and media war is actually the new norm, the new normal of the current social media world. We will see that a lot, but it is upon the two to sit down and find an amicable solution, or to use the social media and put it and give it a consideration in deciding such an important matter as the Nile River. Why South Sudan is more of a reserve is South Sudan is currently playing a mediative role in the negotiations going between the two countries. Yes, South Sudan has been greatly helped by Ethiopia in the long struggle to freedom. And Ethiopia was our sisterly nation. They stood with us, they supported us, but that would only be into consideration as for bilateral reasons. But for the greater good of the region, South Sudan is playing a more neutral and a mediating role actually in this conflict. And we haven't reached a capacity where we can build our own dam and embark on this expensive project, an ambitious project of building also dam on our site in Nimule. So basically, everyone is sitting and watching how this result. But the reaction of everyone in an event of, let's say, Egypt attacking Ethiopia over the continuous filling of this dam may be different. You never know. Hypothetically, they may team up all against Egypt. They may not, they may play, others may involve, others will not. So we don't know what will happen, definitely. Others, actually all other states are reserved as we are watching the negotiation going on.
Most definitely. I know at some point, news media reported that President Trump had hinted on a possibility of a terrorist attack being staged against Ethiopia, targeting the dam. Has there been word on such in your own estimation or observations, or what you personally understand as a development in that area?
Well, we don't know if what Trump was saying was a leaked security report which can be relied on, or it was just one of his other words, because he used to be well spoken, he used to talk a lot. So based on that, we cannot use his statement as a basis of drawing conclusion as to whether there is imminent terrorist attack on the greater Ethiopia Renaissance Dam, or if not. And what we always see is when there is peace, it is only right to prepare for war. And when there is war, it is only fair to prepare for peace. Right now that both countries are at peace, I believe it is in their interest all to be alert of any other organization being employed by one party to inflict pain on the other. And it will also be wise on both sides for them to heighten their security and give way for the dialogue to go on. Thank you.
As a scholar in strategic studies, I know that oftentimes when there are resources to be had, we can look at the Middle East and look at oil that we've had or seen there. We look at the number of wars that have been waged up against those countries. What do you feel may be a likelihood of splinters like your Al-Shabaab or maybe Al-Qaeda even inserting itself into this ongoing dispute and there being a disruption in the region, perhaps from sponsored terrorism?
From all indication, we are actually observing abnormal movements of some of these perceived terrorist organizations along the region. First of all, there are speculation of increased presence of both Ethiopians and Egyptians in South Sudan, which we don't know if all of them are coming there for businesses or some of them have hidden intentions and some sorts of monitoring the situation there. We don't know. At the same time, we are monitoring the movement and the prolifications of the Seleka Islamist movement, who are actually coming from the Central African Republic, crossing all the way from Nigeria and Chad, from the Central African Republic, and their presence is being reported along the Western Equatorial borders of with Central Africa, of the Tombro County. We don't know if this is related to that. At the same time, the remaining split group of the LRA are also being monitored. We also have the Ambororo nomads who are from Chad, also entering illegally into South Sudan soil with heavy number of arms, heavy number of cattle. We don't know if these are related to that. Of course, when such things happen, especially involving such resource as the Nile, Egypt relies solely on the Nile for their agriculture, for tourism, for lifeline support, for everything. We don't know if these are related to this Nile issue or these are totally different issues. We will not be able to understand. So we can only monitor this situation and try to see what it brings out. Of course, we hope the negotiation will yield, because if it does not, definitely it will not only be a war between Egypt and Ethiopia, it will be a whole regional disaster in this matter.
Definitely. Also, when you look at the power of social media or media in general, right? Do you feel that there is a sense, perhaps there is some favoritism where, let's say, for example, certain news feeds that come from Ethiopia are being suppressed or they're being cancelled, whereas some that favor a particular narrative seem to be more dominant. And essentially, you're seeing a lot of youths perhaps being used to drive a political narrative or a political war between these countries.
Actually, here's the thing. Nobody will praise a president for regional development. Nobody will praise a particular president of a state for regional development. But every development within a state will be attributed to the leader within that, which means both leaders in both countries have the right to foster development of their state. And every member of the youth of these states have the right to defend their point of view and their narrative. Now here comes the issue. The influence, how much influence does Ethiopia have on the media? How exposed is Ethiopia to the foreign media? And how much effort is Ethiopia intending to put forward into ensuring that the media gets to know their narrative? And also Egypt, the same thing. So what we are seeing is Egypt is more exposed to the media and more exposed to social media and the rest of the world. So they are using this ticket so much to influence the media to believe in one narrative, which is of course in their favor. However, I would also encourage scholars and the media houses to practice professionalism and balance, while like what you're doing now. How I wish both the guests from Ethiopia and Egypt were here, we could have a better understanding from their perspective of what is going on. So it is also the responsibility of the media houses. Thank you.
Last question before I let you go. Do you feel that perhaps a degree of radicalization may be slowly taking shape to agitate citizens against a sitting government, or rather some politicians may use certain socio-economic vulnerabilities of the youth to try and agitate for a particular political agenda and lead to regional disruption?
Come again, please, if you don't mind.
No problem. I'm asking, do you sense that perhaps there is a degree of radicalization that is taking place where certain youths who are aggrieved with their socio-economic position from their respective areas or countries of origin may be indirectly used to aggravate the situation further, to lead these countries toward a politically displeasing end, which may end up costing the region its peace and stability?
Actually, peace and instability is a bad news to some people. War has become a business. And there are organizations in the world, there are sets of people who gain whereby there is instability in a certain region. After seeing that South Sudan is stabilizing and the issues in Congo are finishing, there's peace coming to Congo, and the Uganda, Kenya are stabilizing politically, of course it might, and I repeat, it may or might work for the benefit of those who benefit in the war to use this ticket to influence the youth and agitate them to use this particular ticket to bring media war, which will in return destabilize the whole region. Yes, it is a possibility, but to some extent it may not be true. What I'm seeing is media propaganda is not something new. However, during the old times, the government had absolute control over media houses. But today it is not the case. We are seeing the young people having access to media, to social media, which they can use to express their genuine concerns and advocate for social justice, advocate for political justice, and advocate for their rights. So at another angle, it might be a natural process being encouraged by the increased access to information, which is an effect of globalization. So I see this from both angles as possibility.
Great stuff. Any concluding remarks, my brother, before we officially end our discussion?
Nile River is a God-given resource to everyone along the Nile basin. And it is to be used sustainably in a manner that will not affect its future use. Of course, we understand human activities have effect over natural resources, like the dam in Egypt. What we have to do is to review the engineering specification of the project. If it can cause any significant effect over the quantity and quality of the Nile, which will be sufficiently enough to bring disaster to Egypt or to deprive Egypt of its use. At the same time, I request other bodies like the African Union. Unfortunately, Egypt has not given so much attention to the African Union. I also wish to request other negotiating bodies to come into this matter before it runs out of hand and cause untold human suffering along the region. Thank you.
Thank you so much, my brother, for taking time out of your busy schedule and sharing insights as well as your wisdom with regards to this developing story, which may have future implications for the sustainability of North Africa, but also for our own effort at uniting as Africans. I appreciate you and I wish you everything of the best.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, my brother. I'm gonna play you out with songs from Oliver Mtukudzi, the late Oliver Mtukudzi. The song is called Dodi. I'm also gonna play after that Bob Marley, and the song is called Redemption Song, and follow with Michael Jackson. The song is called The Ed Song. This is in celebration of your wisdom and you having sacrificed your time to share with us your insights.
Thank you, sir.